Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you back after, spending some time with you during season 1 of Anxious Faith.
Wow. How long ago was that?
That was over a year ago, like 18 months ago we started talking.
It's crazy because I was thinking about coming in here, sitting down with you, and last time I was sitting in my kitchen and trying to not get dogs barking. And I mean, what a season. It was incredible just listening to it from someone who had sat down with you just for my little bit of it.
Yeah.
And hearing the stories of so many other people, it actually just gave me goosebumps just thinking about it because it's a conversation that's important to start, but also just keep on going.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to be able to continue these conversations in season 2. And that's one of the things we're loving about this change of format is that we actually get to spend more time one-on-one with people and get into their stories. So I thought that might be a good place where we start is just for people that haven't either listened to season 1 or haven't pieced together the pieces of you from season 1. Do you want to give us a bit of a short introduction to who you are and kind of your background with anxiety and faith?
My brain is saying, let's keep it short. Okay. And as you know, me trying to be short, that's tough, but we're going to give this a whirl. Okay. Me and anxiety. For as long as I can remember, I've been an overthinker. That's how it was classified growing up. I was an overthinker. I was a creative thinker, which I think is something that a lot of people with anxiety, that's a really nice way of saying that you overthink, is that you are creative, you think big, you think about the whole picture.
You've got a big imagination.
Big imagination. That was me. And I was always a little bit worried. I don't ever remember a time not being a bit worried about everything going on around me. And I thought it was really normal to worry about the worst case scenarios of every situation. Like I think back to being in primary school and driving to school and just thinking through all the scenarios of what would stop us from getting to school.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was at the end of my year 11 and there'd been all this building pressure of the year coming up. I was never great at school. I was smart, but especially the school I went to, it was all about becoming lawyers and doctors and really book smart careers. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do. And there was a lot of pressure. And I don't remember what led up to this moment, but I do remember being in my room, sitting there. I think I'd had some sort of argument or meltdown with my parents, and they were both sitting next to me and they said, we think you need to talk to someone because this is not normal. This is not whatever normal is, but this is not, this is bigger than the situation we're talking about right now, the argument or whatever. And that was the first time someone or two people had really said to me that the things you're worrying about, you don't need to be worrying about.
Yeah.
And part of that was probably because I kept it a lot to myself because I was self-conscious because I knew that it wasn't normal, but I thought, but that means I'm not normal.
Maybe everyone's having these thoughts, but everyone just keeps it to themselves.
Well, everyone does it. It's a really classic pitfall for people with mental health struggles. Everyone's handling it better than I am.
Oh, yeah.
So therefore, it's my problem to fix or to hide.
Yeah.
To hide it better. And so, at the end of year 11, I started seeing a psychiatrist. I started medication for anxiety, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own journey with medication, with anxiety, with mental health. Medication was absolutely the right choice for me. And that carried me through end of year 12. It carried me through college. I went to the US. I studied over there. Came back here and I managed my anxiety through all of those years. I think because I was diagnosed at such a young age, young age 16, I did fall a little bit into the trap of, well, I've got it handled.
Yeah.
So anything, again, that comes my way that I'm not handling well, I just need to work out how to handle better. And in between our last conversation and now, I was there was a lot on my plate with having moved back to Australia, adapting to being back here, learning a new workplace, learning a bunch of different things. And I went and saw a therapist, which I'd been meaning to for a while. I kept putting off. And one of the first things she said to me, she talked to me about my medications, this and that. She said, you should not be feeling this way if this medication was working correctly. You went on it so young that your body has adapted to it.
Yep.
You should not be feeling this way. And she just in that moment changed the course of my year because over the last, nearly 9-10 months, I've been on a new anxiety medication and realizing how much anxiety I was holding in because I thought, well, you've already been diagnosed.
Yep.
You're already medicated.
Yeah.
If you're not handling it, it's because you're not handling it.
Yeah.
And it reminded me that it is such a journey, and I'm a big believer that journeys of healing are not linear.
Yes.
And not that a mental health journey is about healing, because a lot of the time it is lifelong. And so we're not working towards a
magical state where we're never
exactly
worried about it again. Yeah.
Exactly. But reminding myself that I don't just have to sit in anxiety just because I know what it is.
Yeah.
That actually it can continue going up even if I feel like, even in the moments where maybe I don't feel like it's valid, doesn't mean it isn't. But actually that's something I have to keep working on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my short version.
Yeah, yeah. What about faith then? So you are a Christian, you are someone of faith. How have you kind of reconciled your faith and your anxiety over those years since you were 16 and learned that anxiety was what was causing all those thoughts?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think I've definitely met people for whom the opposite is true. And I count myself very grateful that that my journey with God went this way.
Yeah.
And again, it's another journey that is always ebbing and flowing. But if anything, realizing that, okay, there was something wrong when I was 16 and there were all these things I wasn't sure about, gave me greater reason to put faith in a God who loved me through all of it without any need for me to be perfect, without any need for me to understand everything. And it was a little contrary to my friends growing up as a teenager.
Yep.
I was never one who could always pull out the Bible verses or could say, this is what God's done in my life, because he was doing a lot of quiet work. And as I left high school, went to college, lived overseas, me and God did a lot of quiet work together.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for the quiet work because not having access to a firm church environment as I was overseas, I could never really find something that fit me. And dealing with anxiety, dealing with being away from family, all these different things, it could have really easily pivoted to leaning on other things that quite fairly a lot of people do, and I understand.
Yeah.
I don't always know why, but I think that's also the beauty of it, is that I don't know why I fell into God's hands so deeply in those moments. But I did fall. I count time and time again, just did not know what to do and did not know what the right decision was. And that really led me to a lot of, God, I don't know what to do, so help.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean that everything was solved right away in those moments, but I can see back just how much he guided me in those times through nothing that I was doing,
Yep.
but purely because I didn't know what to do. And all the times I did think I knew exactly what the right thing was. Those are the things that he has reworked and that he has formed great paths for good. But even to this day, I feel like of all the extraordinary faith stories out there that you might read about or hear about, and they're incredible and they're inspiring. Mine has always been one of the quiet moments with God where I had no one else to lean on, and he remained.
Yeah. And learning that kind of faith, even the hard way of having no one else to lean on, I think really builds that amazing foundation that you go, well, hey, if I can look back and go, I've gotten through that, God has brought me through that period to where I am now, that kind of means he'll probably get me through whatever else I'm facing.
Yeah.
How does that play out for you these days? Because, you know, you're saying you're still seeing a therapist. It's not, anxiety is not something that has gone away or you're healed from. It's something you're going to be dealing with for probably most of your life, you say.
Yeah.
So how does your faith play into that this day?
Oh, I mean, every day. It's a daily thing with me, that to the point where sometimes, even last night, I was lying in bed and I was going, I think I was like, oh God, this blah, blah, blah. I often just open up conversations being like, oh God, just blah, 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 this of my day.
Yeah.
It's very informal. It's very conversational. For me, that is where my relationship with God thrives at its best, when it's when I am able to just acknowledge he is right there with me. And everyone has their own styles, and that everyone has their own styles. That's what's worked for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, last night I was like, man, is this too chill? Is this too relaxed? Like, really, I'm talking to God as if I was texting a friend on my phone. But to me, that is exactly who my God is. He is the one I trust to text at any time, to call out to at any time. And I do have to check in sometimes and be like, okay, what are you asking for God right now? Are you just venting, or are you actually lifting things up to him? And so I do try to make sure I keep in check with that.
But I think that's a real honest way to be actually relating to God, you know, especially, you know, we see throughout the Bible, you know, people that just cry out in their moment of need, you know, help me God, I don't know what to do. I'm being pursued by my enemies, as David writes in the Psalms, or, you know, the songs of lament in the Psalms.
Absolutely.
When people are just like, we have been uprooted from our homes and we don't know how we're going to get back. There's a real richness in being able to go, my relationship with God is not just the high points or the I need something, but this is what I'm feeling and this is what I am struggling with now, because they're the things he wants to hear as well.
Absolutely. And I think that balance with the high points, the low points, the medium points, the everyday monotony points, I have been able to recognize those high points and low points of being able to praise God, fall into God.
Yep.
But those in-between times are really interesting, because I think my in-between times probably look a lot different to other people. I struggle with a couple different health conditions, and so there are some days where a very normal, regular day for me is quite a physical struggle for maybe somebody else, but it's just a more normal day for me. Actually, I'm a radio host, which you know, and one of my favorite Christian bands growing up was Casting Crowns. A bit cliche, but a high point of my first year on radio in the States was interviewing Mark Hall, who is the lead of Casting Crowns. And I remember him saying to me, just in an off-topic thing, that, oh, you know, I have ADHD, so I struggle to read the Bible. And it hit me like a ton of bricks because I have ADHD and I struggle to read the Bible. I had never made that connection.
Yeah.
But having that normal size that one of the biggest Christian singers of all time struggles with that. It's okay if I struggle with that.
Yep.
That gave me a lot of comfort. I do remember, though, always, and again, not with great reference, but the story of Elijah, I think in 1 Kings, where he collapses under a bush or of some sort, and God sends down an angel or angels that allow him to sleep, then wake him up to eat something that allow him to go back to sleep. They wake him up to take care of him, but then also allow him. They don't come specifically for the courage to keep moving on and keep moving forward and keep pushing through.
Yep.
They come and provide him with what he needs in that moment and in that time. And there are lots of days that feel just like a regular old day for me, where I'm like, okay, yeah, this aches and this is tough and this is sore and this is making me anxious about my day. And actually, I don't need God to heal me in this moment. I don't need necessarily the miraculous taking away of all these feelings to get through. But what I do need is just the provision to get through, whether that be an extra hour to lie down between things, or whether it's him sending someone with a coffee, which sounds so cheesy. But, you know, I'm a big believer that just God sends us beauty in people. He sends us little angel moments. And even just in my workplace, I feel that he's constantly providing me with provision in those medium days where it's not totally bad.
Yeah.
It's not the best day in the world. It's a pretty normal day, and he's providing me with provision because that's what's going to get me through to those big moments, or is going to remind me in the tough moments that he always provides, not just when we're at the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
He's so much more than just turning up.
If we've ticked every box and if we're in the right space. And
at the high points of the movie. You know, the plot points in a movie, we don't see the everydays in a movie. We see the best parts or the worst parts. And he's there on all the cutting room floor. He's through it all, and that's really my day-to-day relationship with him, is constant reminders that that I will get through. And I will find a way, and those pangs of anxiety, the pangs of anything else, aren't my body saying he's not there. It's not saying that I haven't believed enough, so therefore I feel this way. It's finding the duality in it, that I'm experiencing this and God is here. And those things can work together to make that next step. Yeah.
That's really cool. That theme of provision to get through, I think, is something that we really all need to learn at some point in our life. I think I was even reading Matthew 6 this morning, where he talks about, you know, not caring for the day-to-day needs of where will we sleep, what will we eat, what will we wear, kind of thing, because he provides those for the sparrows and the flowers in the field. So, you know, how much more is he going to care for us, his children? But it's interesting because when we come up against a mental health challenge or a physical health challenge where day-to-day becomes more difficult than what it might be for other people, I don't want to use the word normal, but, you know, there are people that find day-to-day stuff more challenging. Like you're saying yourself, there's days where you need more time to recover between things. You need more time to get things done. You need that flexibility a bit more. And there's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because when we were talking in between seasons, we talked a bit about how you'd kind of been in a really challenging place during a period of work that was really busy and really stressful, and where you felt like people will say, or people were thinking you weren't capable of doing what needed to be done. But the reality was you were, but just because of your anxiety, because of your health, the way that looked might have been a bit different, and you might have needed some extra accommodations. And you got to the point where you had to talk to your boss about it.
Yeah. It was, oh my goodness. And actually it was what it was one of the surrounding events for me going to my therapist and getting a change of medication.
Yeah, wow.
So it was, oh man, it was a tough time, but it was a necessary situation. And it was, we have a series of events through the year at work that are high pressure and have a lot more hours attached to them and pressure. And over the years, I've absolutely struggled with confidence, not believing in myself. And part of that is anxiety, you know, constantly doubting your
I'm not good enough to do this.
Yeah, and doubting the assessment you have of a situation. Should I fight? Should I flight? What am I doing? And it's not present in every relationship, but I'm sure you have found, and other people with mental health issues have found, that as soon as somebody knows something about you, without the context of time or without being with you on every step of that journey, understandably, there is an image that they might hold of you frozen in time.
Yep.
And so...
Well, there's assumptions about you that they're going to formulate from that initial
and
experience.
it's nothing wrong in the sense of we all do it.
Yep.
But it can definitely be tough when you've seen yourself grow and you've seen yourself make really important changes and flourishes, but you're not quite sure how to communicate that without sounding like you're tooting your own horn or without saying that they're not seeing it, because you don't want to be like, you don't see me, even though you feel like you're not being seen. And I've had the luxury of knowing one of my bosses for quite a while, and they knew me when I was in those later teen years, and they've also helped me immensely gain confidence in my area of work. So much, put a lot of time in with that. Part of the problem with that is because I've become very good at masking my anxiety, high levels of anxiety might just seem like a very low level, but also vice versa.
Yeah.
Being seen with what seems like a low level of anxiety, if somebody else has seen that that's not the situation, they might take that for being actually me hiding much higher levels of it. Again, fair assumption.
Yep.
And as I was working through this realization that, oh, my anxiety is really bad at the moment and this big event is happening and I need some help.
Yeah.
And I'd asked for some help. But because I'd become quite good at working through my anxiety and working in spite of it, asking for help seemed like a flag that I wasn't capable, or that and this was the big one for me, that I didn't have confidence enough in myself to do what came next. That asking for help was because I was too anxious.
Yep.
When in reality, I'd actually gained so much confidence in what I was doing and in myself that I was finally reaching out for help because I had recognized that I needed accommodations to make it the healthiest work situation for me, both with my anxiety and a few other things. I was like, no, actually, to be the best that I can be in this role, I need some help.
Yeah.
Took a long time for me to get to that point.
So one of the things that you have often struggled with from understanding your story is the fact that you're someone that is going to deal with anxiety and you are going to deal with your health conditions you're dealing with as well. And then coming to a point where you're obviously struggling at work and you need some extra help. How do you go about that conversation where you know what's going on within you, but people have put a different label on what they're seeing. You know, I'm thinking through what you talked with me about when we were catching up, 6 months ago or so,
Yeah.
about how to them they saw it that you weren't confident enough or you weren't capable enough. But for you were just like, no, I am confident. I can do this. I have anxiety. I have some health challenges. Those are the labels that I see and I know.
Yeah.
I need to own them to you now so that you can understand. How do you go about having that conversation?
With a lot of anxiety to start off.
Yep.
A lot of anxiety. And, it gets better so slowly over time. Those physical anxious reactions you have to that sort of conversation, even thinking about it, makes me a little nauseous. And even when I know that I have every right to have a conversation, that I'm pretty sure it'll go logically the way I think it should. Well, anxiety doesn't work off logic. And so your body's like, oh, let's prepare for a deluge of uncertainty and the need to run and hide and all those things. And so first step is bracing myself for all of that and acknowledging that those symptoms are going to come, and that's okay. That's okay because I felt them before, and it doesn't mean I'm less capable of what I need to do. Great thing about my relationship with a lot of people at work and also my boss is that I've had anxious conversations with him before where, look, the reality is that when I'm frustrated or when I am anxious or when I am pretty much anything to do with nervous, I will probably cry. It comes out.
Yep.
And a tagline for every conversation I have that's somewhat deep.
Yep.
To a few days ago, I had with somebody about something else. I was like, my crying is not a reflection on you. It is purely my body going through some intense motions.
Yep.
It's not a reflection on you. It's just going to happen. And so that's something I've gotten very used to saying, hey, I'm going to cry.
Yep.
That's not the point of this conversation. Is that I'm not upset in that sense. I'm just trying to get the words out. So, if sometimes I'll chuck a reminder in at the start of the conversation, it might happen because it often does happen. I'm also trying to become increasingly okay with that. That's not something that's a hard struggle.
Yeah.
I do not like that I have limited control over crying. Especially I used to get scorned for it because you're not strong if you're crying. You're not taking things seriously if you're crying. You're not
strong enough or capable enough.
Yeah, it's always weakness. And so actually me reminding myself that is not weakness. It's purely my body's reaction to some very intense feelings and emotions that I am addressing in the moment. That is okay. So that's always a big part of a conversation like that. And often just acknowledging things for exactly as they are, which is I understand that that you're seeing these things play out, and I really appreciate the support you've given me over time in this situation with someone who's known me.
Yeah.
I appreciate the support you already give me in that area. And actually, I've been doing a lot of really positive work on that. And these other struggles that I'm having are actually not in connection with that. I understand they may come across that way. But what you're seeing as this is actually this.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we don't dismiss how somebody has taken something just because it's not how we intended for them to receive it. Because it might be because of learned behavior with us in history or with somebody else. Now, again, that is something I've not always been great at. I've gotten really frustrated that they've seen me in a certain light. But I get upset if I take something the wrong way from someone. If I've made the wrong assumption, I'm automatically feeling bad.
Yeah.
And I think it's important not to just tell someone they're wrong,
Yeah.
even when it's tempting.
Yep.
So acknowledging why they might have received it in that way and saying, so actually, here's an introduction into what it is.
Yeah.
Introducing a new factoid, a new little bit of information, because they're not going to know it until you introduce it, or they're not going to know for sure, I think, until you actually say, hey, this is the situation. And it's okay for you to not have thought about it that way until now. That's why I'm bringing you this new information. Now, how they respond, that's down to them.
Yep. It's out of your control.
And that's where, you know, the sweats and the stomach and the palpitations and all those things come in. Even when you think it's going to work out well, I still, you know, I have a great relationship with my boss and I still get so anxious because my body is like, well, in the past, this has been the correct response.
Yep. Or at some point in the future, this will be the correct response I need to have.
Yes, exactly. This is me, your body, protecting you from every possible scenario. But in the same way that the anxiety doesn't work through pure logic, the way we heal doesn't as well. So our anxious interpretation of things doesn't always take into account the hard work we've been doing.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we also, as much as introducing to other people this new definition or this new understanding or label of what we, of where we're at now, we also have to keep introducing that to ourselves and keep saying, this is where I'm at now.
Yep.
And yeah, I used to be over there, but right now, this is where I'm at. And it's okay to forget that about yourself as long as you keep reminding yourself. Yeah.
So you challenge your boss's label that he has for you.
Yeah. In a very polite way.
Very polite way. Of course.
Let me...
Yep. You don't want to be the person that just walks in and slams it down on his desk and gets himself fired. But how did that go? And then how did that help you process doing it?
This is great affirmation for me trying to quiet my anxiety. It went very well in the sense that he listened and then he responded, listened as I responded to his response. And I think one of the best bits was he asked, how can I help you now? And how can I help you long term?
Yeah, wow.
Because it meant he was acknowledging not just the need for things to adapt from this point onwards, because what I was seeking was support in certain areas that I was struggling with, not from lack of confidence, but lack of accommodations.
Yeah.
And so, he asked, how can I help you now? And then that secondary question of how can I support you long term was, even if he didn't intend it this way, to me was an acknowledgement that this wasn't something that, well, if we just sort it out now, it'll go away.
Yep.
Or it's something that should go away or something that we need to change about me. It was acknowledging that this was something to add to the Mary pile. And the Mary pile isn't a bad thing. It's just we all have our own piles.
Yep.
This is how I imagine bosses looking at all of us. We're all our own little pile of different people and like, okay, so this person bloop, needs that, bloop, needs that, so that they can do their job.
Yeah.
And they can be the most supported person they can be. Because support to me is what equals success.
Yep.
Support equals flourishing. And I felt that in the moment of, I don't need to tell you to fix this thing about yourself, because actually I'm acknowledging that this is something we're taking into consideration moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's huge, because it's saying, I've seen you, I've seen this new part of you, this new label, and let's do the right work. Let's let's keep on doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think
And you know what? It all came, that language of labels. We were talking about ADHD at work the other day. Cam and Joe on the Drive Show, they were talking about it as parents, all this stuff. And in one of the breaks, I was telling them how much it meant to hear that from parents. And it was such a great conversation. And Joe was talking about, getting rid of labels. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But also acknowledging that labels are okay because people are going to put them on us anyway.
Yeah.
But that just because somebody's put a label on us doesn't mean that it has to be bad, because I would love to get rid of labels. Oh my gosh, that would be great. But that is not what the world we live in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is not our culture. And how can we make it work within what we all do to each other anyway, even subconsciously?
Yeah.
I've just been thinking about that a lot lately. Labels, they're going to be there regardless.
Yeah.
You know.
That's cool. So let's take the power out of them and own the power.
Yeah.
I like it. I think that's huge for any relationship, not just employee boss.
Absolutely.
But if someone comes to us and, a friend, a colleague, a family member, a neighbor, and you end up having one of those conversations where you're challenging or educating each other about labels kind of thing, having a response that is not, I need to fix this now and then we're done, is, like, as you say, it's like I see you, but I also then value you because I'm going to take on board what you are telling me.
Yeah.
And so I think for people that, might have friends or someone open up to them about especially mental health, being able to say, yeah, okay, I will take that on board. I'm not trying to fix it right here and now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that on board. It's going to go on your pile.
Yeah.
It's going to help me to know how to support you because, as you say, support equals success.
And how to help our relationship thrive moving forward. It's saying, I see our relationship down the road, whatever type of relationship that may be. I see it in the future because what you've said in this moment has not made me think, I don't want to spend time with you.
That's it.
I don't want to be around you, which for anyone with mental health, that is a very real fear. It's a real experience of having people say, I don't want to deal with this, so I'm going to check out.
Too much.
Too much. You're too much. That's such a common thing. You're too much. So having someone acknowledge you're not just not too much right now, but I don't see that as your definition moving forward.
Yeah.
It's so affirming.
Well, that's it. For anyone that is dealing with anxiety, to be able to get to that point of knowing your anxiety enough and being confident and assured of yourself despite all of that anxiety, to be able to stand up and say, I need to advocate for myself right now. I need help in this and no one else is going to advocate that for me is huge to get to that point. And that's why I want to have this conversation because I think there's some benefit for people that might be going, hey, yeah, I can see the pathway in my mind of what would make it easier for me to deal with my anxiety on a day-to-day basis, be that in work, be that in church, be that in family or relationships. But I'm too scared or don't know how to have that conversation. So if it's all right, how did that conversation go with your boss when you sit him down and then, you kind of began to understand that he was having this – he was reading the situation that you weren't confident enough.
Yeah.
But you were actually going, no, I can do this. I just need some help.
Yeah. And it honestly, and a lot of this goes down to his integrity, though he is very conscious of sitting down and making sure that we are all okay, the members on our team. There are a couple great things about my workplace. One of them is I'm surrounded by some great Christians. The majority of people I work with have been on some sort of faith journey, which means that, and this isn't always the case. I've worked in places where this isn't the case, but another fortunate thing is that something that is common through all my coworkers is kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
Now, that's not always the way in the church or the way of our faith, but again, I've been really lucky in my workplace right now that is something I'm constantly surrounded with and creates a lot of safety. And so my boss is great in the sense that and this is built over time to this month. I had a conversation where I could not imagine myself being that confident 6 months ago, but it's created that level of confidence in me advocating for myself.
This is really interesting because, you're working with a lot of other Christians in your workplace, so you'd kind of think, well, automatically that's going to make it easier to have this kind of conversation. They're going to understand. They're going to be filled with compassion and the love of Christ to help me to do whatever I need to do. But it's often not that way, or just because they are Christians and they are kind people doesn't make having that conversation any easier.
No, and you always hope for it. You hope that those foundations of God's love will extend through your coworkers in your workplace if that's something that is part of their mission. But it's not always the case, and so that was also a filter I had in my head of always wanting to be careful, because I knew that just because I hoped for that type of positive response didn't mean it was always going to happen. I've been on the receiving end of Christians who made me feel very uncared for and very unloved. And so being able to go into a conversation with my boss where I needed to ask about, so going into a conversation with my boss where I had to ask basically what he thought of me in this situation.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness. It was.
No one wants to have that conversation.
No. And I had every type of anxiety symptom that, it was, even thinking about it.
I can see now
I don't like it. But, and it for the week after, it was it was almost withdrawal from that. It was all the feelings, but he was so responsive because he listened. He listened first, asked questions, listened again, asked what he could do to support me immediately and then long term. And I do not take that response for granted. Because I think it's very common, not just because of the mental health struggle itself, but also because of a history of responses that anyone who struggles with anxiety or depression or anything of that realm, you brace yourself for the worst case scenario. You plan for the absolute worst because there's not enough proof it won't happen. There's not enough proof.
And that's the nature of anxiety. Your brain is telling you that
spiraling.
I'm going to get fired. They're going to hate me. They're going to kick me out of the building. I'm never coming back. I'm going to be homeless because I'm not going to have a job.
They'll hate me. Or worse, they won't like me anymore. That to me, I'm like, just let me know that you think I'm a good person. And it actually, that conversation set us up for every conversation we've had since then. It's also brought down a wall for me of being like, okay, well, if I can tell him this, then you know what? Pivoting off that, here's a bit of this and here's a bit of that. And, that's a struggle today, but here's how I can make that work. And I'm also acknowledging that it's okay for other people to forget that I might be in a different place from where they're used to seeing me. Especially because I was so deficit. Yeah. I had such a deficit of confidence going into my adult years that feeling it in a normal amount and then growing into having it a healthy amount or whatever normal and healthy mean might not be normal for people, even if they've known me a long time. My parents, every now and then, I live with them after having been away for 6.5 years, and every now and then they'll comment how great it is to see me in a specific place of confidence or believing in myself after so long of not having seen that. And these were parents who believed in me in excess and always taught me to be myself. They did everything they could within the world that we're living in and in the life I was living in. It's okay for people to not have caught up with where you're at. and having to remind them gently, remind them that that you're okay and that
you're not the same person that you were.
Yeah, that you're not the same person, and it doesn't mean things will always be great or anything like that, but just that actually you'd love to invite them to where you are now.
Yep.
It's not a negative reflection on either of you. It's actually just acknowledging that it's not a year ago, 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be. And this is a big one for me. Not taking it personally, which is so hard, but not taking where they see you as a reflection on who you are or where you are.
Or where you actually are.
Yeah, it's purely because they just haven't caught up yet. And if we scolded somebody for every time that happened, well, actually, we kind of do as a society, but we need to do better with that because if we allow people the time to catch up, then it makes it so much more inviting and the growth is exponential. Whereas if we just get frustrated, which I'm guilty of absolutely having done that, if we get frustrated, then we're saying, we don't want you to see me. I don't want you to see me where I'm at, instead of inviting them to see you as this new version of yourself.
So you have the hard conversation with your boss. He responds in a really great way, and I think that's a real encouragement for.
It can happen.
It can happen.
It can happen, yeah.
But also for those of that might not be suffering from a mental health challenge themselves, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, this is what I'm struggling with," that's a great response. How can I help you right now? But also, how can I help you long term?
Yeah.
Not just I don't want to hear about it, or here's Band-Aid and let's never talk about this again.
Yeah.
So you've had the hard conversation. He has obviously offered you support. You're still there, so I'm guessing things worked out relatively well. But what does that do for you going forward then? And how has advocating for yourself changed your approach to how you share about your anxiety and what you struggle with?
Absolutely. I've always been someone who was willing to talk about mental health stuff. But even I think when I've said that out loud, I've still always gone, but what does it make other people think?
Yeah.
Do they think I'm a bit cuckoo for that? Like I've been very wary of people seeing that as the only label. And feeling like I had to prove all the other labels. Yeah, but I'm this. Yeah, but I'm this. Yeah, but I'm not just that. And over the last couple of years, I've acquired a lot of labels. I've acquired a lot of different things that are very easy to label me with. And in having done that, without wanting them, they've fallen in my lap. I've realized that those labels only have the power you give them. And also labels can be exactly what somebody else needs to see. Whether or not you want to wear it, you're wearing it.
Yep.
And you can feed into what other people believe that label to be. And maybe that is the right way for it to be.
Yeah.
The occasional label is like that.
Yep.
But taking ownership of it and actually saying this is my label for whatever weight I give it or you give it, this is what I give it. And I'm lucky to work at a workplace that encourages open conversations within people's comfort levels, of course, that, that whatever your struggle is, you never have to feel like you can't talk about it. A huge thing for me at my work is that they have a therapist available to anyone who needs it. And that was very helpful for me. And she's the one I see now and I adore her.
Wow.
I love her. And it's created a culture of talking about therapy very comfortably.
Yep.
Now, obviously, different workplaces have different levels of interpersonal connection.
Yeah.
I happen to work at a workplace where I work in radio. We talk for a living. My team does. And also it's faith-based radio.
Yeah.
Which means whenever you add faith into the pot of your job, of where you want your career to go, it automatically becomes personal. If you try to keep those completely separate, I don't know how that can ever actually happen.
You do a disservice to both.
Exactly, because faith is inherently personal. It's deep into who you are. And so when you talk for a living and then you're talking about your faith, it means a lot of deep conversations happen. And it means that when you suddenly make things like therapy okay, you suddenly make mental health conversations okay, you suddenly green light, it's okay to not be okay.
Yep.
You open this door to like 30% of conversations people won't touch. And not because they're not the right conversations to have, but purely because they don't know if it's okay.
Yep.
And a big thing for me as well is that there are conversations happening across genders. It's a lot easier, I think, to talk about those vulnerable things with your gal pals, with your guy pals. I don't know the guy side of it.
We don't talk about that.
No, that's what I've heard. But it's so encouraging to hear everybody, regardless of their group, their this or that, opening up about these things, because it takes away yet another layer of this should be hidden.
Yeah.
And while maybe it hasn't been the biggest of like really visible changes since my personal conversation with my boss, I also know that I'm far from the only person who has those conversations with the various bosses at my organization. I know that the more those conversations happen, the more comfortable it gets, the more open it gets. And the more we have the ability to truthfully and deeply say to anyone who listens to our radio that those things are okay. You can't fake that last 10% of genuineness, of honesty. I think people think you can. And look, some people are great actors. And I know on the days where I'm struggling to stay awake for my show that, there's a certain amount of default I can do. But you cannot fake the caring. And that caring for others, which is a lot of what my job is. I speak to a room in a microphone very similar like this. Often it feels quite lonely because it's just me. But the reality is that there are thousands of people in the room with me every night. And I can't care for them if I'm not first telling myself that the things I'm telling them, same goes for me.
Yeah.
So I cannot stand by them and say that God loves you even at your most anxious, even at your most depressed, even when you hate God, God still loves you.
Yeah.
If I don't believe those myself, and if I don't actively encourage my coworkers in that and tell them that I believe in them in those moments and that they're supported, then I'm not doing my job. And I'm actually not even doing the job of being me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing my actual work job, and I'm not doing the service to myself, because I think one of the worst things you can do is fake your faith. And by worst things, I don't mean that, everyone goes through their struggles and everyone has their ups and downs, but it's okay to not be sure. It's okay to have those struggles and to doubt God.
Yeah.
The last people I want to go to in those moments are the ones who are telling me that everything is perfect. They're just the last. I run to the other end of the hall from them. They are the youth leaders I don't even want to think about. But the ones who have admitted to me that they've also struggled and that it's okay to be feeling all of that intensity and struggle, and that I don't need to have all that belief in the moment because they've got belief enough for both of us.
Yeah.
it goes further than any Bible verse. It goes further than any. It just goes further than anything.
Yeah. It's amazing how once you get to that point of owning your labels, that I think we just found the title for the episode.
Ooh. Hair flip. Thank you so much.
You've taken me in a slightly different direction than I thought this episode was going to go, but that's fine.
My niche is doing the unexpected. I think most conversations I have with people, it's a pivot.
Yep.
But I was already braced for it, so you're welcome.
Yep. So yeah, you get to that point of owning your label. And for you, one of them is anxiety. One of them is ADHD, as you mentioned before as well. How does owning your labels and understanding yourself affect your faith?
The thing that just jumped into my head when you said that was liberated. It makes me feel liberated. I never feel stronger in my connection to God than when I'm thinking about all the things he created me to be. And it's putting a smile on my face right now. I don't think there's a single label that I have on me that hasn't been put there with a very specific purpose in mind. And I may go my whole life not knowing what that is, but that's not for me to know. When I think about the things that other people have done for me in a kind word or in a story or something they've shared with me about their own life that I've never told them. And I kind of hate that, but I've never told them what that meant to me, maybe because it wasn't the right time. Maybe it was a story through a friend. I got divorced a couple years ago, and the amount of stories that popped up to me through my family of people I didn't know, but they had told my family member who had told me this incredibly encouraging story about where they were in their life now. They will never know what that meant to me. And yet them having that label of a divorced person, a divorced Christian, an anxious divorce, whoever knows, there's so many different labels on that person. I don't even know their names.
Yeah, wow.
But they're labels that brought that story to me. They got me through that moment. And so I just think, well, you know what? If that's the way my labels show up, great. That's awesome. And if I never know why God put them on me, that's okay too. But I don't want to try scrubbing them off for somebody else. It's really easy to fall into that pitfall of, well, maybe everything will be okay with this person, or maybe everything will work out this way if I'm able to hide that one thing. If that one label, that one thing is just easily enough concealed, we'll be fine. But by spending all that energy and effort trying to do that, you are in turn diminishing your own value. You're saying this is all bad. This label is all bad things. And that's you saying to yourself, I'm also those things. I'm all those beliefs I've put on that label. But by actually just cleaning it off and saying, you know what, this is me and it is here for a reason, even if I don't know what that reason is, you're reminding yourself that there is good in it, that there is purpose in it, and that you are good and you have purpose, and that there are maybe more labels coming your way that are going to be hard to read and going to be hard to show off. But if we do that positive work with the labels we have right now, maybe it's 1 or 2 or 10. We take away that negative power and instead we give them that positive power and we give them that purposeful power that God has already seen in it. He has gone, yep, that's what I'm going to give you because I know what you can do with it. And even if you can't see it yet, I know. And I always think about, I have quite a visual relationship with God in the sense that I always imagine how he's, and I don't see a face. It's like an aura. I don't know. I'm like, how is God looking at me in this situation right now? And it's often with a very cheeky smile and a bit of a giggle. But like, it's this knowing understanding of, man, this is tough, kid. But oh my goodness, you have no idea how much this is going to serve you in where you're going. And in all the times I've wanted to know why he put this label on me or he brought that into my life, all the times I've wanted to know, I can look back and think, oh, I'm so glad I didn't know. I'm so glad I still don't know a lot of things because I think I would still try and fix them.
Yep.
I say all these things.
Yep.
It's a battle every single day to want to show up with my labels, to want to show up with exactly who I am.
Yeah.
But it takes so much more energy to be anything except you.
You. Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm just not interested in it anymore, you know?
Yeah, that's really good. And this is, it's amazing to hear your story of getting to that point because being able to own your label can take a lifetime of work sometimes.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's taken your lifetime up until this point as well.
And I'm sure it will continue being that way.
But there is that huge benefit and that relief of being able to actually go, no, this is who I am. This is who I've been created to be. Because that's one of the things that I really find freeing in thinking through how does our mental health for people who are struggling with it, especially in a chronic sense or lifelong sense, reconciling that with the fact that God knew who I was going to be before he made me.
Yeah.
He knew everything that was going to happen. I'm not a mistake. God doesn't make mistakes. He knows that this is who I am. And I am actually starting to become okay with the image of who he created me to be, which I think just opens this huge door for us to then have that honest and real relationship with each other and with ourselves, but also with him. Because there's not the please God take this away from me, but it can turn to an attitude of thankfulness of thank you, God, for how you have made me.
Yeah.
Thank you that you knew me before I was born. Thank you that throughout all of creation, you care about me enough to make me my own individual person with all these labels.
Like through the immense world we live in, the universe we live in, he saw purpose in creating you.
Yep.
In you.
Yep.
And when we are able to see ourselves, again, for however long that journey takes, there is no right length to it, and it's a constant journey. When we're able to see how opposite of a mistake we are, like we are on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yep.
Just run to the other end of the room. That's how far away you are from being a mistake. Then we can also start showing others how far from mistakes they are.
Yeah.
And that it's like this circle that will just keep on going. I remind you, you remind me, we keep empowering each other to live our truths, to live our incredibly purposeful life that just needs to be believed in. And some people go their whole lives without that belief. And it's up to not just us, but us seeing that in others to help them unlock that and say, you know what? You don't have to see that. You don't have to see everything God has to offer you yet. I just want you to know that I see you.
Yeah.
And I see that you are meant to be here. Neither of us know why yet, and that's okay. That's not what makes you purposeful. Knowing what the purpose is, that's not what makes it. It is simply a statement of fact that you are not a mistake, and everything that you are and all the labels that you have been created for a purpose.
Yeah, that's really cool. For someone who's struggled with the labels of anxious and not confident and all of those ones that you grew up with and self-identified with at the start as well, has learning the labels that God has for you made an impact in how you think about yourself? Something like some of the labels of, we are his children.
Yeah.
We are loved. Yeah. We are redeemable.
One that always pops to my mind, and when you just said that then, was worthy. That's always been a really big one for me, especially as I've navigated, bad breakups and all that stuff. When we do we almost attach our purpose to a relationship or to somebody else or to a career or to all sorts of things. Being reminded that you are worthy of everything purely because you are in this moment right where you are. You don't have to do anything except be right where you are sitting right now. That makes you worthy purely because you're here. And that to me just fills my heart every time, knowing that I'm worthy purely because I am me. I am loved for that exact same reason. Yep. And all these things cherished, a sweet child of God, a member of his family, a brother or sister to another member of his family. They're all these things that we can't change. And in that same sense, all those labels that maybe we don't want, okay, well, maybe they can't be changed either. But they can have that same liberation. They can have that same freeing feeling that we get when we are told that we are worthy and that we are loved and that we are a child of God, because all those things he has done with equal purpose. He has told us we are loved and that we have anxiety.
Yep.
And a lot of the time it doesn't feel that way. It does not feel equal, does not feel any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But the reality is that equal measuring teaspoon of both when he created us. And maybe one of them is a mental health struggle. One of them is just a fact about our place in his heart.
Yeah.
But those are both just facts about us.
Yep.
And if we make the choice for them to have equal positive impact in our day, doesn't make the anxiety easy or take it away or devalue the struggle, but it also doesn't devalue you and it doesn't devalue your purpose behind it.
Yeah. That's a huge encouragement to find and to get to that point. And I'm so glad to see you at that point and to see you believing those labels that he has for you.
And I always feel it important to say that where I was 6 months ago, looking back to the previous 6 months, I couldn't believe I was there. And where I am right now compared to 6 months ago, I'm really grateful to be here. And I don't know what's to come in the next 6 months, and it could be up, it could be down, who knows? But you don't have to feel as though you are succeeding on your journey to have made progress.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be going the way that you want it to look or think it should look.
Yep.
Because I didn't think this was how my journey would look, honestly. And even just you and I chatting today, I'm stoked with where my mate is on his journey and all these things. And again, who knows what we would have predicted, but a lot of joy can be found in the unknown. And I just want people to know that they are worthy of their journey and that it's okay. It's okay. And you don't have to be succeeding to be making progress.
Yeah.
I don't know. That just is something that I have told myself that I'm not making enough progress because it's not all wins. Life isn't all wins.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why I brought sports into this. Like, what am I doing? That's it. That's
it. Yeah,
time out. That's done.
Right. Mary, thank you so much for just being so open and honest. And I think one of the things that I love is when we own our labels, and we're vulnerable enough to say, this is who I am. It just fosters that space where people have the freedom to begin to own their own labels too.
Yeah.
And my hope is that for everyone listening, that is what they'll start to do, to start to go, hey, the labels I might have, that I might put on myself due to my anxiety, due to my mental health, whatever it might be, they are okay because I am also a child of God. So thank you, Mary. Appreciate your time.
My absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more from us, we'd love for you to consider subscribing and dropping a like on this video. As always, you can see way more content on our website at anxiousfaith.org, where you can listen to episodes of the podcast and read articles about anxiety and faith. Be sure to also follow us on socials through the link in the description. That way you'll be able to keep notified of when we're dropping new episodes of the podcast and keep you updated with other projects we're working on. Thanks so much, and God bless.